What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Scyushi and we are back in some more Trove. And today we're going to be deep diving into the Mystic Gems. So I'm going to be going over pretty much everything that we know right now from the test server. There's going to be a huge bulk of things that we're going to talk about. I'll try my best to add proper timestamps for all of it. Before we get started though, I would appreciate if you left a like. Helps me out a lot more than you know. So a summary of what we're going to end up talking about today is upgrading your gems, gathering Mystic Gems just freelance from open worlds, why there is no D15 Cosmic World, and a couple other different things. So let's talk first and foremost about how you will obtain Mystic Gems. Well, there's two different ways you can go about this. One is upgrading your crystal gems into Mystic. And there's been a lot of controversial topics on the matter. Somebody ended up correcting me on the stream yesterday that if you end up using a Mystic Gem converter on one of your crystal gems, you will see a stat increase on the gem, but you won't see a power rank increase. I don't know whether or not that's a bug or anything like that. Again, I'll have another video that'll talk about all this once it's actually on the live server and we can confirm it all. The other main way that you would end up going about getting Mystic Gems is D15 exclusively is going to end up dropping the new gem boxes. So in our existing D15 of Long Shade, that's currently even on the live server right now, there's the 5-star dungeons, which gives you some unique resources. And then there's the normal dungeons, which literally serve no purpose on live server right now. They're like, everyone ignores them because what's the point? But when this update drops, all the dungeons will end up, of course, dropping, gem boxes. And these gem boxes will drop crystal gems commonly. Make a note of that for later when we talk about crafting gems and so on and so forth. But then they'll very rarely end up having Mystic Gems. And fortunately, with this update, we are getting D15 of the elemental worlds. Except we're not getting D15 of the geode surface. And this is where we get into theory, guesswork. So my theory is they're saving D15 geode for another update. Maybe they're planning on giving us new Leviathans or something like that. And hopefully, if they do, those new Leviathans would give us new banners, maybe up to Mystic. That would be pretty crazy. And more importantly, we could possibly see them dropping some depth cores and stuff that you could otherwise only obtain out of the delves. Make a note of that, because if this theory is correct, then a lot of the different puzzle pieces would kind of fall into place with regards to this update, because there's a lot of confusion around the gems and the severity of the numbers and grind time that players are going to have to dedicate in order to actually get your gems maxed out and so on. I do want to also confirm that, unfortunately, if you go to an elemental world, you'll get let's say we go to a water world, you'll get a water D15 gem box every single dungeon. Unfortunately, the Prime World still has the problem of not giving you boxes every single dungeon. So this becomes the least efficient world to farm, which kind of sucks. Now, unfortunately, because we don't have D15 Cosmic, Geode, Surface, whatever, how do you actually end up getting Cosmic Gems? Believe it or not, it becomes time-gated and random, because they did end up posting a notice saying that D15 Long Shade, Prime Worlds, they can randomly generate with Geode Surface. We already know that. Those surface biomes in this world can drop the Cosmic Gem boxes. So Cosmic Mystic Gems become time-gated and become very, very random if you're free to play and actually trying to farm them. And as we'll discuss later in the video, in order to upgrade your gems, or rather in order to get the Mystic Spark item, you need a bunch of Crystal Spark items. But there's not a super efficient way of farming for Cosmic Crystal Gem Sparks, because we aren't going to end up having a D15 consistently of Geode. But let's move on. The gems that you decide to upgrade become increasingly more important of a decision. It's not something that you can just be like, I'm gonna upgrade my air gems. Like, no, you need to absolutely 100% prioritize your Cosmic Gems first and foremost, because your cosmic gems are the only gems that are going to give you light. And the more light you have, the quicker you'll be able to complete dungeons in D15, because the enemies just have such an insanely high dark stat, which is basically the armor stat in the game, and then the light stat is the armor penetration stat in the game. So you need to have as much light as possible to farm these worlds more efficiently. And if you farm them more efficiently, it means more boxes, which means more gems, which means more of the gem sparks and resources that are going to be required for upgrading the gems. But okay, let's move on to talking about upgrading the gems. As mentioned previously, there is going to end up being a mystic gem upgrade item, where you basically will be able to upgrade your crystal gems into mystic. You'll get a stat boost. You won't get a PR boost. The PR mostly comes from the added level cap of the mystic gems. There is going to end up being a cash shop equivalent of the mystic gem converter, which I think is convoluted as hell in terms of how Trove is designed. Like, it just, I don't like that. Like, as far as a shop and neatness and trying to not like scare the player away from spending money, having like multiple upgrade items in the shop to me just feels like a bit of a mistake. Like, it's going to end up making the crystal gems a lot less desirable to players, but I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be a beginner's trap or something, who knows. They did end up confirming that the mystic gem converter is going to cost the same as the crystal gem converter, and then the crystal gem converter is going to get lowered in price. But I'm still kind of on the fence, wondering, are they talking about both credits and qubit cost? Because we haven't heard any official word of them talking about a qubit cost for the mystic converters, and that's where I'm still a little bit concerned. Outside of the pay-to-win equivalent, there's the free-to-play equivalent, and the gem upgrader or converter costs way too much. Like, the devs, look yourself in the mirror and tell me how you sleep at night. Because 200 souls of the depths, are you serious? Are you freaking serious? Like, oh my God. This is a resource that can currently only be farmed in super deep delves. You cannot solo those delves, at least if you want to keep your sanity. And thus, you have to have a solid group of people that you would end up being able to grind that with. I do not have that privilege, but I also don't really go out of my way to grab a group of people to do it, just because it's like, whatever. I hate the delves and I want any excuse never to go there again. Now, on top of this one resource being atrocious, let's go back to the theory that maybe Geode D15 is going to end up having new Leviathans and maybe enemies. I'd love it if it was enemies that would actually drop those souls of the depths. But at the very least, if it was Leviathans, that would be awesome, because then it's something that we can continually farm and, you know, just easily do with a random group of people instead of only with a very select group of people, you know? And unfortunately, this area is like so tough that you have to be on optimal classes. Like, everyone's got to be doing their job. Anyways, moving on to the Mystic Gem Shard. We haven't talked about these yet. So for now, you guys already know a lot about the normal gem sparks, right? So it's 30,000 gem dust for a single gem spark, which at first seemed pretty atrocious. But then when you consider how easily you can actually obtain these sparks off of higher tiered gems, particularly when you start getting into crystal gem dropping territory, you would actually end up leveling up a crystal gem to level 15 before you would loot collect it. And then you would actually get more sparks back than the amount that you spent, like in terms of gem dust. You do waste a little bit of your flux overall, but generally speaking, it was a pretty good way of actually farming for these. And you're going to need them because the new resource, which is a Mystic Gem Shard, costs 20 each. In gem dust terms, that is 600,000 of every elemental gem type just to craft one of these. And you're going to need quite a few of these in order to max out one Mystic Gem. Never mind like all of these. Like, it's just, so with that said, this resource isn't as bad as you would think. It's currently, like, looking at these numbers, it's like, oh my God, that's atrocious. When compared to live server, yes. But when you compare the fact that D15 is now going to continually drop crystal gems consistently, with mystics being the rarer of the drops, then suddenly these aren't that bad, because that would be basically like I'm gonna say like 20 dungeons. Granted, you know, you would obviously level up every one of those stupid gems so that you could then loot collect them if you want to be super efficient. The problem is that you need to have one of each elemental type. And as I mentioned, the cosmic gems are technically time gated now. But okay, let's talk about the actual gem stats and so on. So looking at the gems, I'll put an image on the screen right here. This is going to end up being the PR difference. So you can see that there is the lesser gems, which ultimately will be able to go up to level 35, up from level 30. And you're going to end up gaining 273 power rank. This is per lesser gem, by the way. And then 121 light. So that's quite a bit of extra light. That's quite a bit of extra power rank. You can get over 50 KPR. Yes. In fact, I think it's 54.4 KPR as far as I'd heard. Granted, you have to have Mystic Gear and so on. But then there's the Empower Gems, and we haven't even talked about these yet because I kind of wanted to avoid it. But anyways, looking at the cost of these, it's pretty... At the very least right now, it's 1 Mystic Spark per gem upgrade level. That still is a lot when you consider how many elemental sparks you're going to need. But if you're just laser focusing on one specific elemental type, it's not that bad. I feel like the Empowered Gems, this has got to be placeholder because it's significantly cheaper to upgrade your Empowered Gems. I hope this isn't placeholder because that's very affordable, but I feel like it's not scaling correctly. Anyways, you'll end up gaining 582 power rank out of the Empowered Gems and 165 light out of each of the Empowered Gems as well. So getting Empowered Mystic Gems, oh boy. Getting them free to play, I should say, is gonna be, I don't know if it's possible. Like, I mean, it is, but not really. Because the amount of resources that you need in order to do this is astronomically insane. So again, we see Souls of the Depths, which you have to consider. Souls of the Depths, in order to get Souls of the Depths, you need to be strong enough to be able to handle those deep delves in the first place, which means that you more than likely need to have the Mystic Gems if you can't actually get the Mystic Gear, because otherwise you're just going into the delves with C5 gear, in which case you have to have a group of people that's actually like considerably stronger, and it just like the window of opportunity gets smaller and smaller and smaller the further away you are from having Mystic Gems and Mystic Gear. But in order to get Mystic Gems and Mystic Gear, in order to get the stupid Souls of the Depths, you need to actually have the, you know, it's like that, what's that old proverb where it's like, I need experience to get a job, but I need a job to get experience? You know, like it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a head scratcher for sure. But okay, looking at the actual cost, the Souls of the Depths, 5 each, okay, whatever. That's still really expensive when you consider this is a resource that the average player can't farm, like period. Then there's the Mystic Shard. Okay, whatever. These are still egregious, but at least it makes sense. But then you need to take into account Empowered Gem fragments. So lots of players probably don't even know that these exist, but if you end up opening an Empowered Gem box and you get an Empowered Gem, you can actually loot collect it for like, I think 3 or 4 Empowered Gem fragments or something. This is 50 each. So that is... I think that the devs don't realize that Empowered Gem boxes are time gated. Like, as far as I know, there's no cash shop alternative. It's literally just tied to your lunar souls. So I know that they're designing this for freaks like me that have played the game for years, but I don't regularly grind my lunar souls every day or every week or anything like that. So it's like, you know, I would be suffering in terms of like trying to actually grind these boxes. And let's not forget that the box itself doesn't guarantee that it's going to end up dropping an Empowered Gem. In fact, you can see in the description, it can still drop Class Gem Key fragments. It should not do that. It should be a guaranteed Mystic Gem drop. You guys already know the pain of getting a good Empowered Gem in general, let alone it has all the boosts on it, and it's not a 2-star. It actually has the element that you want. It actually has the ability that you want that's not overlapping. Like, there are so many parameters, and now you're telling me that we have to do that again for the Mystic Gems, and there's a chance that you just wasted all of these resources to get Class Gem Key fragments? pathetic. Like if we could end up spending our class gem key fragments and gain a mystic class gem for free, okay, cool, no problem. But as it stands right now, man, like this is bad. Anyways, let's move on to what I think is the most important thing to discuss, which is what you should focus on when this update comes out. Because I know a lot of this can end up being very discouraging, especially if you're free to play, but it's not as bad as you think. So as we've discussed, grinding the gems themselves, if you're strong enough, it's not bad, honestly. Like you just got to grind enough dungeons that you can end up getting the gems and then you can upgrade them. And of course it's going to end up costing you like hundreds of thousands of gem dust of each elemental type. Okay, cool. That's fine. But at the very least, it's still grindable, you know, even if it's basically just we copy and pasted crystal gems and we just increase the price of everything. You know, that's why I personally just was not very excited for this update in general, because it's like, oh, cool, more gems, higher tier gems, not something more meaningful like rings or, you know, crafting mystic gear or something. Like it just, that would have so much more impact than gems again, because in my opinion the gems don't really change much in terms of the gameplay. It's like, oh cool, I got higher stats. But again, referring to the prime world, if this prime world would guarantee drop boxes every single dungeon, then at the very least you could consistently try to farm for each elemental gem type in a singular world, rather than I have to spend 100 hours in this biome, 100 hours in this biome, 100 hours in this biome, and that's probably lowballing it. You probably got to spend a lot more time than that per biome. But anyways, assuming that you are free to play and you're going the gem conversion route, it's just not efficiently, like it's not affordable enough to bother doing it for all of your gems, especially for your lesser gems. It's probably just going to be easier free to play to just farm new gems from scratch. I know that sucks, especially when you consider there's also the gem augmenting, which, by the way, now that we're talking about it, I had somebody else ask me the other day, if you end up converting your gem with the Mystic Gem Converter, do you keep the augmented stats? Yes, of course you do. That's the point of upgrading your gems. It's the same as the crystal gems. It's literally just copy and pasted code. So, assuming that you might go the route of pay to win, or if, please God, if we have the option of spending qubits, then yes, it's time gated. Yes, that is very, very slow and stupid, but at the very least, it's a slow guarantee that you'll end up being able to eventually just upgrade all of your gems. And that's well worth the amount of effort and headache that it would otherwise require to not only get the gem converters free to play, but also to just grind your gems from scratch. Like that would just be so terrible. The point I'm getting at is when you do get the option of upgrading your gems, which gems should you upgrade? I would 100% prioritize the cosmic gems first and foremost, because as I mentioned earlier, they're the gems that give you the light, and the light stat is the only stat that really matters when it comes to the end game. Let's be real. And realistically, the rest of the gems getting mystic is kind of just for a flex. Like you'll obviously end up getting increased stats and it will make a difference, but generally it's not going to be as impactful as the actual light stat is going to be. So you could even technically just ignore the rest of the gems, at least until you ended up consistently getting more of the resources required for all the other stuff. But say you do want to keep going beyond that, then I would say the empowered gems would be your next priority. Not your class gem necessarily, unless you 100% want to main your specific class, because you got to consider that these empowered gems can be swapped to any class, whereas your class gem cannot. And in my specific circumstances, I have all of my class gems on the yellow slot. So unboxing new gems becomes very, very particular for me, because it has to be the right element and ability in the specific slot. So that's why like the empowered gem box is just so tedious for me, because this way, with all of my classes having a yellow class gem, it means that I can just take all of these gems at any time and swap them to a different class without any conflicting problems. As for the lesser gems, should you upgrade them? I mean, like, I'll say this. If you got fully maxed out crystal gems, fully augmented, maybe you want to end up spending a mystic gem converter. But the crystal gem converter was already like pretty on the fence as to whether or not it was worthwhile. The mystic one isn't worth it The reason you do it is for convenience. That's the trade-off. So you need to consider your time and how important that is to you. You need to actually set it up as like a valued asset in terms of, okay, do I just end up going the route of pay to win and getting these gem converters, or do I just get my lesser gems maxed out? In my instance, like I said, if this is for qubits, that'll definitely help me. But I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm not against pay to win by any means. You guys know me. And I would not be against getting the Mystic Gem Converters just so that I could have that huge power bump and basically keep playing the game the way that I want. Because unfortunately, the last topic that we have to discuss today is in regards to which classes you should use for the end game grind. We're not going to go into too much detail with it, but more particularly, I just wanted to mention that unfortunately, some classes just aren't going to cut it when it comes to the end game anymore. Because D15, the enemies are so powerful that you basically have to swap off speedy characters and dungeon farmers like my Shadow Hunter and instead swap to a DPS, a full damage boss killer. So classes that are really good in delves or fighting against leviathans, those are the classes that you're gonna want to unfortunately gravitate towards. Unfortunate in my case, because it's like Shadow Hunter is just so bad, or not bad. He's not a very good boss killer. He's a jack of all trades, master of none, but he's a very, very good overall speed farmer. Not very good in the delves. Definitely not that good against bosses. So if I literally just take all my gear off my Shadow Hunter and swap it to my Boomeranger, I am just more efficient, just like that. And that's something that you need to consider depending on what your main class is. Now, there was a bit of a rebalance to some of the characters in the game, and I'm by no means saying that, oh, you can't main the character that you want. It again is something that you have to consider your time as an asset. Do you want to keep grinding dungeons with your favorite class, i.e. in my case, Shadow Hunter, but take significantly more time to grind the new items than it would to just swap to a class that I don't enjoy as much? And you got to kind of straddle the line. Like, that's kind of the biggest issue with this update, is there's a lot of bigger questions like that you need to start asking yourself rather than just enjoying the video game. And that's kind of my biggest issue and gripe with this update, but it's all up in the air, so who knows? We'll have to wait and see when it all goes live, and I'll be able to give you guys a little bit more raw data and information on like the gems and upgrading them and so on and so forth. I can say that you can get a Mystic Gem right out of the gate to level 28 before it starts costing the Mystic Gem Spark. So it's not impossible. It's not awful. It's you know, the lesser gems themselves. The main issue is if you're free to play and you don't have much gem augmentation items, it's another resource that's basically like super time gated. And that would end up being your wall, is just augmenting the gems. But if you can easily augment gems, then frankly speaking, it might be time to just say goodbye to your old lesser gems and just farm up some fresh ones. That's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel. I'm still really looking forward to this update because I'm a freak and I just want an excuse to keep grinding this game. But I hope that I ended up answering any questions or concerns that you had about this update and about the gems in particular. Of course, I'll have updated videos as we get more information and so on and so forth, but as of right now, this is all we got. So I hope I did justice. Anyways, sayonara and stay epic, everybody.